Here are the gap and go trades that I am tracking for the week of the 8th through the 12th. First up is NEO. I'll give you the price targets for Monday and also talk about the gaps. We ended the week at 806. To the north side from where we are takes us to roughly 813. Another level of resistance and potential take profit area, 829, 837, and this gap forms at 846. Closes out at roughly 848, a very tiny little gap, but there's another gap that I am tracking that begins at 894 and closes out at 904 roughly. We are not in that channel, not in that zone yet, but something to be aware of to the upside. Now to the south side at -2 standard deviations and support 796, 788, and 779. This smaller gap down here that I've been tracking at 747 closes out at roughly 743. The next stock is Sofi. We ended the week at $8.22, down more than 2%. To the north side takes us to 866. A gap forms to the upside at 903 at 3 standard deviations, another level of resistance and take profit area, and at 4 standard deviations, 935. I will extend that here, and this line needs to be moved to Monday. And this gap I am also tracking. But this one closes out at 962. This one forms at roughly 972 and closes out at 994. And then we also have another gap to the upside. $11.10 and $11.29. We've been taking a beating lately because of the downgrade, but don't believe everything that you hear. And check out the institutional ownership of Sofi also, if you're trying to maybe do some long-term investing. To the south side, middle of the trend and the baseline and support, 797, 729, 694, and 660. I bought in at 6 and I think a few other price points that I have not sold out of just yet, but I will. And then we've got this gap. Oh, did I mention that one? 11.10, 11.29, I think so. And that's it. TSLY is a new one for this week. We ended the week at $10.96, down more than 4.5%. We are basically at the middle of the trend. And from here to up here, we are at resistance. So the next level of resistance, and there are plenty of other levels. I'm just giving you a few of them. At 11.29, 3 standard deviations and a take profit area. Potentially 11.45, the gap closes out at 11.50 and 11.62. If we get up to these levels, I will anticipate a pullback as people take their profits, okay? They're locking in their profits. But then the other gap that I'm tracking takes us to 11.86, closes out at 11.96. Oh, and one more. We are not in the channel, not in the zone, just something to be aware of when we finally rebound. But there's a lot of downside left to go with Tesla, and a lot of gaps to the downside. But if you pull and look, take a look at the big picture, pull back out and look at the daily, the weekly, and the monthly, you'll see different gaps. And this, you can read up on what this is all about with Tsly if you don't know much about it. But anyway, the next one I want to go over, I'm going to try to keep this moving here, is 1655 for snap. That's where we ended, up more than 2%. We are at the beginning of a gap fill and basically at the middle of the trend. The gap fills out at 1691 at resistance. This will be a sell-off area as people lock in their profits. Should we go up, the next level of resistance, 1709 and 1729. To the south side, 1612, 1592, and 1573. Note the bounce here at support. Pfizer, I am in this one for my mom. And again, I'm in Sofi also. We ended the week at 2147, up more than 1%. 3 standard deviations, 2961, 2980. A gap forms to the north side at, actually it closes out, this one closes out at 30.35, and then we have another one that I am tracking. Oh no, I'm sorry, these are some price targets that I like to mark out for myself to see where we're going and where the potential is. But 31.79 was the price target, but now we're at 31.26. Always want to make sure you look at that for the downgrade. All right, to the south side, 2867, 2848, and 2828. This gap closed to the downside already at 2880, and we are at support, a rip up to resistance, and then back down to support and back up to resistance. This one, I really do want to enter on this one. Altria Group. We ended the week at 41.49, back to the baseline, 41.56, 41.83, 41.96, and 42.09. The gap closes out. It started here at 41.35. Is that? Closes out at 42.40. I want to move this line to see what's happening. Oh, that was way back here it formed. It formed on the 20th of December. All right, we are still working this gap to the upside. The highest we went was at 4 standard deviations. And then what happens at resistance? Boom, to the south side. But now we're on our next leg back up to see if we can do it again. Closes out at 42.40. And this one has taken a beating and is slowly going up. Those are my old support and resistance lines, so ignore that. Now to the south side, where I would expect a bounce, 41.30, 41.16 roughly, and 41.03. All right. SLB, Schlumberger. We ended the week at 51.86. Oh, let me move this to Monday. Right there. Back to the middle of the trend takes us to 52.11, 52.75, 53.07, and 53.04. I always anticipate price to stay within 2 and -2 all day long. Anything outside of that, price will not stay there. People will take their profits or they will buy in. But to play it safe, you stick to -2 and 2 standard deviations. The others at 3 and 4 standard deviations are outliers and definitely a sell signal for me if I'm just trading or doing short swing trades to get out. All right, this gap that I will be tracking for the week is an extension of a gap that I've already talked about. 55.40 closes out at 56.39, and I think that's it, yeah. Note the sell-off here. Oh, and this little, what is this gap I've been tracking? Oh, it closed out already at $52. We have a landmine to the south side that I'm also tracking for the week. I'll just extend it to here, but that would take us to 49.80, closes out at 42.99. We're not in that channel, not in that zone, but something to be aware of. The next one is BABA. I'm in this one. Option R, if you don't know, are the quick keys on a Mac. This one is a hot mess, let me tell you. So oh, there we go. It's like it hasn't populated, but it just did. 73.01, we ended for the week, down more than 2%. To the north side, I've been playing with this chart. Let me move this line, see if I can find. Where is, oh. Sometimes I move this. All right. No, that's not the line I'm looking for. I want to move this. There we go. To Monday. If you don't know how to draw out this chart, well, you can watch me do it. All right, I'm moving that to the 8th, this line, and it closes out. I did not mark it yet. To the 12th. Oh yeah, I did, it's right there. Let me remove that. So I'm tracking, this is the whole week, Monday through Friday. So let me give you some price, Command Z there, just to redo that. All right, here is the price, 73.01. To the north side takes us to the middle of the trend and the baseline, and this will be resistance, 73.58. There's a gap that forms to the north side at roughly 74.01, closes out at 74.64. 2 standard deviations and resistance, and another potential take profit area, 75.18. This is also resistance and another level of resistance for the gap. And this gap begins at roughly 75.74. 3 standard deviations is 75.96. This gap closes out at 76.54. And this gap begins, we've got a lot of gaps because this stock has tanked on us hard previously. 77.68 and roughly 78.46. Yeah, that's it. Look at all that support and resistance before we started to fall. Oh, and there's this other huge one. Wow. It's going to take a long time to get there, but at least this tells me we have a lot of upside potential just because we crashed so hard. This is just technical analysis. You've got to do your own fundamental analysis and see if it's worth getting in. All right, and then we have a gap to the south side that closes out at roughly 72.54, 72.06, 71.26, and 70.41 to the south side. We have a lot of gaps that close to the south side too, but I just need to get rid of this one, and that way there's just one less landmine we have to deal with, and then we can start possibly going up. Again, take a look at this in the big picture, monthly, daily, weekly. Starbucks. I'm in this for my mom. My computer is very slow today. 92.99 is where we ended. Middle of the trend and resistance, 93.07. 93.78, 94.13, 94.50. And this gap I've been tracking takes us out to 97.64, begins at 96.85. And this gap to the south side here has not closed. And thank you to Marat for pointing this out in the past. I've tracked this many times. So we've got a gap that takes us down to 91.72. This gap is still in play. And then we've got another gap, another landmine that I have marked out that takes us to, I just extended this, but really this is where we are right here at the end of the week. And it looks like it will touch it here. So we could be touching it by the end of the week. To the south side. Takes us to 90.69 and it closes out at roughly 85.18. This is not even in the zone to close out. We are a long ways off. And this is the one that we will be talking about for this week. So we've got gaps to the upside and gaps to the downside. This thing is all over the map. So therefore it makes it a good swing trade. Extend this to Monday. There we go. We ended the week for Nike at 102.08. I'm also in this ticker for my mom. I think I bought here at 94.42. I'll have to double check that. To the north side, 102.49, 103.12. A gap forms at 103.61, 103.73, and it closes out at roughly 104.02. To the south side and the baseline, 101.24, $100.04, 99.38, 98.76, and obviously a lot of levels in between, but these are just some of the obvious support and resistance lines. ORCL is a carryover. The two new ones are Tsly and Snap that I'm tracking for this week. And I will keep tracking it until they actually close out, and then I take a look at some new ones. We ended the week for ORCL at 102.73. To the north side, 103.63, 104.11, 104.59. This gap forms to the upside that I've talked about at 104.89 roughly. Closes out at 114.83. A lot of upside potential, but clearly we're not in that zone, not there, but something to be aware of. To the south side, 101.70, 101.23, and $100.74. Lows. I was there at my Lowe's a couple of months ago, and I witnessed some people stealing copper. It was disgusting. I was thoroughly, oh man, I just hope the police catch these people and send them to jail. It's horrible what they're doing. A group of people stealing with a U-Haul van that they rent and then stole. It's just terrible. Of course, I had to call the police and then call Home Depot and warn them about the copper thieves as well. 212.51 is where we ended, up more than 0.5%. Back to two standard deviations, 213.87, 215.69, a gap fill starting at 216.82. Four standard deviations, 117.40, and this gap closes out to the north side, hooray, at 218.50. To the south side, 210.32, 206.80, 205.09, and 203.30. And finally, Nvda. We were so close to closing out that gap that I have been tracking, but no cigar. It was over here. We almost made it, but we were shy. So this gap has been extended. Where are we here? I've got to move this. I looked at it, but I had to move this out of the way so I could see better. Right, Monday the 8th, right there. All right, we ended the week at 490.97. To the north side, a gap begins at 497, closes out at 3 standard deviations, $500.82. If we get here, we're going to sell off for another attempt to go back up. That's one scenario. $500.82 will be the closure. And then should we be so lucky, but don't hold your breath, at 504.53 will be another sell-off. I never expect price to get to 4 standard deviations in one day, but because we are already at 2, that is possible. And this, please, fingers crossed, can get wiped out so I can stop tracking it. All right, to the south side. Back at the baseline and support 489.64. A gap forms at 483.20. The next level is very close, 482.09. That gap closes out at 480.92. 478.42 and another potential buy-in area, 474.75. I never anticipate price to get down to this low in one day, but because we are already so low, getting there, well, we're kind of far away from up here, but this could eventually get there, I think, if we go down. But the nice thing is on the 5-minute, this is a nice upward channel. All right, that does it for me. That is a look at all of the gap and go trades that I am tracking for the week of the 8th through the 12th. And again, some of these are a carryover. And if there is something that you would like me to go over, please let me know. Thank you for watching. Have a great trading week.